You spent years putting your children first, sacrificing, guiding, and making sure they had everything they needed. Now that they're grown, you might think the best choice is to stay close, to keep the family together. But what if that's the worst decision you could make? Think about it. You dream of golden years filled with family dinners, laughter, and love. You picture yourself surrounded by grandkids who adore you, children who appreciate you, and a home that feels warm and full. But reality, it doesn't always look that way. In fact, moving close to your children in old age might be the biggest mistake of your life. Instead of feeling cherished, you could feel trapped, unappreciated, or even forgotten. You might become the free babysitter, the unwanted guest, or the silent observer in a home that isn't truly yours. Your presence, no matter how well-intended, might start feeling like an expectation rather than a joy. This isn't about whether your children love you. They do. But love doesn't always mean closeness. Love doesn't mean losing yourself in their world or waiting around to feel needed. If you're not careful, you could find yourself in a situation where you've given up your own independence, your own happiness, just to be nearby. And for what? To feel sidelined? To witness things you wish you hadn't? To become an afterthought in a home where you once hoped to belong? Guard your peace. Protect your freedom. Step back before it's too late. Before you make the decision to move closer, you need to hear some hard truths, because once you make this mistake, it might be too late to undo it. Let's talk about why. If this message opened your eyes, imagine how many others need to hear it too. We're bringing you life-changing insights that could save someone from making a decision they'll regret forever. So, if you found value in this, hit like, subscribe for more hard-hitting truths, and share this with someone who might need it. And tell us in the comments, do you think living close to your kids in old age is a mistake? Have you experienced this yourself? Let's start a conversation that could truly change lives. Number 1. Don't fall for the family fantasy. Your dream retirement could turn into a nightmare. You spent your whole life dreaming of the perfect retirement, surrounded by your children and grandchildren, sharing meals, making memories, feeling loved and needed. But what if that dream is just an illusion? What if, instead of joy, you find yourself feeling trapped, unwanted, and invisible in the very place you thought would bring you happiness? It's easy to believe that staying close to your family will make your old age better. Society romanticizes the idea of multi-generational living, painting a picture of warm Sunday dinners, grandchildren running into your arms, and a home filled with laughter. But reality is often colder, lonelier, and far less kind. The greatest burden a parent can bear is the expectation of gratitude. Stoic wisdom. The truth is, your children have their own lives, their own struggles, their own families. No matter how much they love you, their world does not revolve around you anymore. You might move closer hoping to be part of their daily life, only to realize that you're an outsider in their routine. You might expect visits, invitations, and appreciation, but instead, you could find yourself waiting by the phone, hoping they'll remember to call. Imagine this. A father moves to a house near his son, picturing weekend gatherings, heart-to-heart talks, and a place in their family dynamic. At first, things seem great. Sunday dinners, helping with errands, babysitting. But slowly, something changes. The invitations become less frequent. The visits feel more like obligations. The energy shifts from warmth to routine. One day he overhears his son sigh, "I feel like I never have space anymore." That single sentence shatters everything. This happens all the time. It's not because your children don't love you. It's because when you're always around, your presence is no longer special. You stop being a beloved guest and start feeling like a permanent fixture in the background. Think about it. When we see something every day, we start taking it for granted. The sunrise, a beautiful view, even the people closest to us. The same thing happens when parents live too close to their children. Your visits become expected, your presence becomes normal, and eventually you stop being appreciated. So, what's the solution? Guard your peace, protect your independence, reclaim your freedom. Instead of clinging to the past and hoping to be needed, build a life of your own. Move somewhere that brings you joy, not just somewhere close to your kids. Find friends, explore hobbies, create new memories outside of family gatherings. Be a parent they want to visit, not one they have to see. Happiness is not in the hands of others. It is found in the life you choose for yourself. If you truly want strong, meaningful relationships with your children, don't suffocate the bond with constant presence. Distance, when chosen wisely, can keep love alive, keep relationships fresh, and make every visit a joyful occasion rather than a duty. Don't make the mistake of believing that proximity equals closeness. It doesn't. True connection isn't about how often you see someone. It's about how much you value the time you do spend together. Before you uproot your life to be closer to your kids, ask yourself, are you moving because it's what's best for you, or because you're afraid of being alone? If it's the second, it's time to rethink everything. Number 2. Escape the trap. Why moving closer to your kids might ruin your peace. You raised them, sacrificed for them, and built your life around them. Now, in your later years, you think moving closer is the right thing to do. It feels like the natural next step. Family should stay together, right? But what if that decision takes away your freedom instead of giving you comfort? What if it turns your golden years into a slow, silent struggle where you feel unwanted, unseen, and exhausted? Chains do not always rattle. Sometimes they feel like a warm embrace until you realize you can't move. At first, it seems perfect. You're nearby, available and present for birthdays, holidays, and the small, everyday moments. But slowly, something shifts. Your presence turns into expectation. Instead of visits filled with joy, they start feeling like obligations. Instead of being a welcome guest, you become part of the background, always there, yet slowly fading into irrelevance. And then comes the unspoken tension. You see their struggles, their stress, their fights behind closed doors. You notice the exhaustion in their eyes when you ask for time, the hurried excuses when they can't meet. They love you, but life is moving fast for them, and you're just one more responsibility on their ever-growing list. The home you hoped would be a sanctuary starts feeling like a place where you are tolerated rather than treasured. Have you unknowingly built your own prison? Imagine a bird that spent years nurturing its young. One day, the fledglings leave the nest, soaring into the open sky. But instead of flying freely yourself, you choose to stay behind, perching on the edge of their branches, waiting, watching, hoping they'll still need you. But they don't, and the longer you stay, the smaller your wings become. This isn't just about them, it's about you. You deserve a life that is your own. You deserve friendships, adventures, and peace. But peace doesn't come from squeezing yourself into a life that no longer revolves around you. It comes from standing on your own, proud and independent, embracing the next chapter instead of clinging to the last. The Stoics believed that true peace comes from within, not from attachment. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The same is true for love. You don't need to be near your children to be loved. You don't need to be physically present to remain close. True connection is about respect, space, and choice, not constant proximity. So before you uproot your life and move closer, ask yourself, is this really what's best for me? Or am I just afraid of what life looks like if I choose myself instead? Because the truth is, distance can strengthen love. When you visit by choice instead of habit, when your presence is appreciated instead of expected, relationships grow. They remember why they miss you, instead of wondering why you never leave. Guard your peace, protect your freedom, step back before it's too late. Don't become a prisoner in a life you thought would bring you joy. Number 3, Stop waiting to be needed. How proximity turns you into an afterthought. What happens when you spend your whole life raising, supporting, and guiding your children, only to find that one day they no longer need you the same way? It's a hard truth many parents face, and the instinctive reaction is to stay close, physically, emotionally, always available. But here's the irony. The closer you try to stay, the more invisible you may become. You might think moving near your children will strengthen your bond, but in reality, it often does the opposite. Instead of being appreciated, your presence becomes routine. Instead of being sought after, you become expected. And worst of all, instead of feeling needed, you feel tolerated. There's an old saying, familiarity breeds contempt. When something or someone is always there, it starts to lose its special value. Think about it. Do you ever get excited about the air you breathe? No, because it's always there, unnoticed. But take it away for a moment, and suddenly, it's all you can think about. The same principle applies to relationships. When you're constantly present, your children stop truly seeing you. You fade into the background of their busy lives. It's painful, isn't it? You spent decades being their protector, their guide, their everything. And now, after all those years, you wonder, where do I fit in? The truth is, if you have to force your presence into their lives, you've already lost your place. The best relationships aren't built on proximity, they're built on choice. Your children should want to see you, not feel obligated to. And the best way to make that happen? Give them space. Think about friendships. The best ones are the ones where you can go weeks or months without talking, yet when you reconnect, it's meaningful, it's intentional. Imagine if you started calling a friend every single day, dropping by unannounced, inserting yourself into their decisions. How long before that friendship starts feeling suffocating? Now, apply that to your relationship with your children. Are you showing up because you're genuinely wanted, or because you're afraid of being forgotten? Let's be real. Nobody wants to feel like an afterthought. But clinging too tightly won't make you more important. It will only make your presence an expectation rather than a joy. And when something is expected, it stops being appreciated. Instead of being the parent they miss, you become the parent they manage. So, what's the solution? Reclaim your space. Step back, not out of anger or sadness, but out of wisdom. Create a life that isn't entirely centered around them. Find new passions, new friendships, and new adventures that make you excited to wake up in the morning. Because here's a powerful truth. When you stop waiting to be needed, you become wanted. When you build your own happiness, your children will naturally be drawn to you, not out of duty, but out of genuine love. You are not just a parent, you are a person with your own story to live. Don't shrink yourself just to stay close. Give them the gift of missing you and give yourself the gift of freedom. Number 4. Love from a distance. Why too much closeness can destroy family bonds. Can love survive when there's no space to breathe? Can a relationship remain strong when it's built on obligation instead of choice? The harsh truth is this: too much closeness can ruin even the deepest bonds. You think staying near your children in old age will bring you closer, but what if it does the opposite? What if, instead of feeling loved and cherished, you start feeling like a shadow in their lives, unnoticed, unneeded, and worst of all, resented? Love is like fire. It gives warmth, light, and comfort, but only if it has space to burn. Smother it, and the fire dies. The same applies to your relationship with your children. When you're always there, just around the corner, just a phone call away, just stopping by unannounced, your presence stops being special. Instead of them missing you, they might start wishing for more space. Instead of them valuing your time together, they might feel obligated to entertain you. And obligation kills love faster than absence ever could. Think about it. When was the last time you truly missed someone who was always in your face? Distance creates appreciation. When something isn't always available, we value it more. That's why moving closer in hopes of deepening your bond might actually backfire. Your children may love you deeply, but they also need their own space to grow, to manage their own households, to be their own people. And if you're always around, that space disappears. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." If you constantly crave their time, their attention, their presence, if you feel the need to always be near, it's a sign that you need to build your own life, not linger in theirs. Consider this. Imagine if your parents had moved next door to you when you were raising your own children. Imagine them dropping in whenever they pleased, offering unsolicited advice, making you feel like you had to constantly manage their emotions alongside your own life. Would that have made your relationship better, or would it have made you feel suffocated? The same is true for your children now. There was an older woman I knew, a kind and loving mother named Helen. After her husband passed, she decided to move closer to her only son. She thought it would bring them closer, that she'd be a part of her grandchildren's daily lives. At first, everything was wonderful, but then little things started changing. Her son was too busy to stop by as much as she expected. Her daughter-in-law started seeming less welcoming. The grandkids, who once ran into her arms, started seeing her as just another part of the daily routine, not a special presence in their lives. One day, Helen overheard her son tell his wife, "I feel like we never have our own space anymore." It hit her hard. She had moved closer out of love, but instead of strengthening the bond, she had unintentionally put a strain on it. Realizing this, she made a difficult but wise decision. She moved to a small town she had always loved, about 2 hours away, and something amazing happened. Her son started calling her more. Her grandkids started missing her visits. The space she created didn't weaken their bond, it strengthened it. This is the truth no one tells you. Distance does not weaken love. It makes it stronger. When you're not always around, your presence becomes meaningful. Your visits become special. Your relationship becomes something they cherish, not something they tolerate. So ask yourself, are you staying close because they need you or because you're afraid of being alone? There's a difference. One keeps the relationship healthy. The other slowly breaks it apart. Give them space. Give yourself space. Let them miss you. Because the strongest relationships aren't built on constant closeness. They're built on the freedom to choose each other, time and time again. Number 5, colon. Reclaim your freedom. Don't shrink your life to fit theirs. What happened to your life? When did your dreams, your passions, and your freedom become secondary? You spent decades raising your children, shaping their future, making sacrifices without hesitation. But now, in your later years, have you unknowingly shrunk your world to fit inside theirs? It starts with the best intentions. You tell yourself it's for the family. Staying close will keep you connected, will make you feel needed. You picture yourself as an essential part of their lives, helping out, being involved. But slowly, reality creeps in. Instead of being appreciated, you feel like a background character in their story. You wait for their call, their invitation, their attention. And when it doesn't come, you feel lost, as if you no longer have a purpose outside of them. If you live only to be needed, then what happens when you're not? The harsh truth is, you were never meant to live through them. You raised them to be independent. You taught them to stand on their own. Now, it's time to take your own advice. Because if you keep shrinking yourself, waiting for them to need you, you will lose something even more valuable, yourself. Imagine a tree that grows tall and strong, providing shade and shelter for years. But what happens when it stops reaching for the sun and starts bending toward the nearest wall for support? It loses its strength, its direction. It no longer thrives. It just exists. That's what happens when you give up your own life to stay in theirs. You stop growing. It's not selfish to live for yourself. It's not wrong to choose your happiness over proximity. In fact, it's the healthiest thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for them too. Because a parent who has their own life, their own joy, their own purpose, is a parent who is loved, not just tolerated. The best way to keep your family close is to live a life so full that they want to be a part of it. Think about it. Would you rather be the parent who is always waiting, always lingering, always hoping to be included? Or would you rather be the parent who is fulfilled, independent, and living a life that excites you? Because when you live for yourself, something amazing happens. They miss you. They want to call. They want to visit. Not because they feel obligated, but because they see your happiness, your energy, and they want to be around it. So don't shrink yourself. Don't make your world smaller just to fit inside theirs. Move somewhere that makes you feel alive. Do things that make your heart race. Find friends, hobbies, passions that remind you that your life didn't end when they grew up. It's just beginning. Protect yourself. Guard your peace. Reclaim your freedom. You spent your whole life giving. Now it's your turn to take back what's yours. Number 6. Protect your sanity. Why guarding your space is the best gift you can give yourself. At what point did you stop putting yourself first? When did your own peace take a back seat to making sure everyone else was happy? You spent years caring, sacrificing and giving, always thinking about what's best for your children. But now, in your later years, you need to ask yourself, who's protecting you? Who's looking out for your peace of mind? Moving close to your children may seem like the right thing to do. It feels safe. It feels like love. But here's the truth. Proximity doesn't always mean connection, and being too close can slowly chip away at your sanity. You might not even realize it's happening until you wake up one day feeling unwanted, drained, and emotionally exhausted. Think about a houseplant. It needs water, sunlight, and care. But overwatering, too much attention, too much presence can kill it. Relationships are the same. Too much closeness can suffocate love, turning something beautiful into something burdensome. There's a reason why Stoic philosophy teaches the power of detachment. Not detachment from love, but from expectation, obligation, and over-involvement. The more you revolve your world around your children, the more you risk losing yourself. You may not even notice it at first. You think you're just being helpful, just being involved. But slowly, your presence starts feeling routine, expected, and even resented. And let's be real, this isn't about whether your children love you. Of course they do. But love doesn't mean always being in each other's space. Love thrives when there's freedom, when there's choice, when people actually miss each other. Imagine this. You move close to your children, excited to be a part of their daily lives. At first, things are great. Sunday dinners, babysitting, family gatherings. But then, the shift happens. Your unannounced visits start feeling intrusive. Your advice, once welcomed, now feels like interference. Your presence, instead of being appreciated, becomes background noise. You overhear things you wish you hadn't. The small annoyances start piling up. Your child's spouse begins to feel watched. You realize you are not truly part of their life. You are simply in it, like furniture in the corner of the room. And then it hits you. You gave up your independence, your routine, your own life, just to be close to them. But was it worth it? Guarding your space is not selfish. It's survival. You deserve a life outside of being a parent. You deserve peace that isn't dependent on whether your children have time for you. You deserve to wake up excited about your day, not waiting for their call, their invitation, their approval. Give them the gift of missing you. Give yourself the gift of peace. Because when you create space, you create value. When you reclaim your freedom, you reclaim your worth. If this message resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, discuss it, and most importantly, start living it. Your peace is worth it. Number 7. Before it's too late, the hard truth about living near your adult kids. What if the very thing you think will bring you closer to your family is the thing that drives you apart? What if, instead of feeling cherished, you start feeling invisible? By the time you realize it, it might already be too late to turn back. Many parents believe that staying close to their children in old age is the best decision. It feels safe. It feels right. After all, you've spent your entire life raising them, sacrificing for them, and making sure they had everything they needed. But here's the truth no one tells you. Proximity doesn't always mean connection. In fact, it can mean the opposite. The closer you are, the more you see, and sometimes the more unwanted you feel. It starts subtly. You drop by unannounced, thinking they'll be happy to see you, but instead you sense hesitation. You offer advice, thinking you're helping, but they take it as interference. You expect warm invitations, but instead you notice them getting busy, making excuses, or simply not making the effort you had hoped for. The very thing you moved for, love, family, closeness, slowly begins to feel like a burden. And the worst part? No one says it out loud. They just start pulling away in small, silent ways. Imagine planting yourself too close to a young tree. At first, you feel intertwined, connected, but as that tree grows, its roots push against yours, needing space, craving independence. If you refuse to step back, you don't strengthen the tree, you suffocate it. And in doing so, you rob both of you of the natural beauty of growth. This is the part that stings. Your children love you, but they don't need you the way they once did. And if you make your entire world about them, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak. No child, no matter how loving, wants to feel responsible for their parents' happiness. They are building their own lives, just as you once did. And if you're always too close, too present, too involved, it shifts the dynamic from love to obligation. And obligation turns into resentment faster than you think. The hardest lesson in life is knowing when to step back. It's understanding that love doesn't mean being physically close all the time. It means respecting space, setting boundaries, and allowing relationships to breathe. It means trusting that you've raised them well enough to navigate life without your constant presence. It means reclaiming your own purpose, your own happiness, instead of waiting for them to fill the empty spaces in your life. Sometimes, the best way to hold on to something is to let it go. This isn't about abandoning your children. It's about freeing both of you from silent expectations and unspoken tensions. It's about understanding that your life still has purpose beyond parenthood, that your story doesn't end just because your children's stories are moving forward. So before it's too late, wake up. Ask yourself, are you moving close to them because they truly want it, or because you're afraid of what your life looks like without them? Are you seeking connection, or are you afraid of being alone? Because the truth is, you are not alone. You still have a life to live, a life that is yours. Protect your peace, guard your freedom, love them from a distance, and most importantly, live for yourself. Number 8. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. How staying away can strengthen your family. They say distance makes the heart grow fonder, but what if I told you it also keeps relationships stronger, healthier, and more genuine? You might believe that being close to your children in old age will bring you more love, more time together, and a stronger family bond. But what if the opposite is true? What if, by always being around, you become expected instead of appreciated, tolerated instead of cherished? Think of a favorite song. If you hear it once in a while, it moves you, excites you, brings joy. But if it plays on repeat all day long, it starts to lose its magic. You don't notice it anymore. That's what happens when you make yourself too present in your children's lives. Instead of being someone they look forward to seeing, you risk becoming part of the background noise. Just there, always available, always within reach. This isn't about whether they love you. Of course they do. But human nature doesn't work the way you might hope. When something is always available, it's taken for granted. When something is scarce, its value rises. You don't want your presence to feel like just another daily routine, something to be checked off a list, something they barely notice. You want it to be special. I once knew a man named Robert. He retired and moved just 15 minutes away from his son, thinking it was the perfect way to stay close to family. At first, it was wonderful. Family dinners, babysitting the grandkids, feeling needed. But slowly, things changed. His calls were returned less often. His unannounced visits were met with forced smiles. One day, his son finally said it. "Dad, we love you, but sometimes it feels like we don't have our own space." That hit him hard. He had thought being close meant being loved more, included more, valued more. Instead, he realized he had become an obligation, not a joy. He made a bold move. He packed up and relocated to a town 2 hours away, building his own life, making new friends, finding new passions. And the result? His son started calling more, visiting more, making an effort. Their relationship grew stronger, not weaker. The best way to be missed is to be gone sometimes. If you are always within reach, there's no need for them to make an effort. No one craves what they already have in abundance. But when you give them space, when your visits are planned and intentional, they become meaningful, exciting, something to look forward to. So ask yourself, do you want your children to appreciate you or just get used to you? Do you want your visits to be moments of love or just another part of their busy schedule? Love thrives in space. Relationships breathe when they're given room. Protect your peace. Step back before you fade into the background. Let your absence make them realize what your presence truly means. That's how you keep the bond alive. At the end of the day, love isn't about how often you're around. It's about how deeply you're valued. Staying too close to your children in old age might seem like the right choice, but it can backfire, leaving you feeling unappreciated and overlooked. Distance creates appreciation. Space strengthens relationships. You deserve a life where you're cherished, not just expected. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share this with others who might need to hear it. Have you experienced this yourself? Comment below, and let's start a conversation that could change lives.